right. Very good. So hello, everybody. Great to chat with you today. I'm honored to have Megan Swanson on, and she has a long list of accolades. I'm going to just highlight probably a couple of them today, but she's the CEO of the Powerhouse Pageantry company. And then she also, I guess, inside of that, coaches individually, group coaching. And then she has her own podcast that she does regular posts with. Additionally, some of her accolades, she won Miss Nebraska USA, and a few things I've gathered just getting to chat with her and learning and listening to some of her content is that she's one of the strongest people and she always loves to learn. And then additionally, she loves music, the Enneagram, her family, and the only thing that she might love more than all three of those is her faith life. And so super stoked to have Megan here today. But hey, Megan.
Hello. I think that is legitimately the best intro ever. So really good job. And I feel like I just learned things about myself.
No, hey, well, it's it's quite the list of accomplishments, but you've been working hard.
Thank you. It's weird sometimes to hear those read back because it's over such a long time span. And also, when you're living in your own brain in your own world every day, sometimes those accomplishments just seem like, well, this is just another day in the life. And something I definitely preach to my clients every day is to remember their accomplishments. So I need to practice what I preach to.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you being on here. And as everybody knows, the main focus of what we talk about is there are these moments that happen in someone's life. And, when that moment's happening, you oftentimes don't know exactly the magnitude of the moment. And then inevitably, only in hindsight can you connect the dots and you're like, holy cow, that was a game changer moment for me. So thinking about that for you, is there anything in your childhood, in your upbringing that you feel like were lessons learned or lessons taught to you that have, been catalysts for some of the successes you've had at different points in your life?
Absolutely. So one of the things I talk about quite often is I walked through an eating disorder when I was 19, and this is before Instagram existed, before kind of our lives were on display. And so I had no idea that binge eating disorder was a thing. I was raised very skinny and 6 feet tall since I was 12 years old, and all these things, and then stopped growing. And so I didn't know that a lot of the manifestations of some trauma and some things that I had gone through in my childhood ended up manifesting in something completely different,
Wow.
and it wasn't until really Instagram and some self-discovery and kind of starting my personal development journey in my early 20s with pageants and just growing my character and trying to flesh out some of the problems I was dealing with and learning how to bring those to light and allow my faith to be in those corners of my life, even the really dark corners. But it all started when I was really young. I was actually bullied by the same girl for 13 years from the time I was 5 till I was 18. And she was the other captain on the basketball team. She made my life a living hell on the basketball team. And I had 3 different girls with the exact same name who tried to ruin my life over the course of about 8 years. So whenever I meet somebody with this name, I'm always like, trigger warning, and I've had to get over that. But it was really hard. And growing up with 2 parents as pastors, we've started 3 or 4 churches in my life, and I've seen it all, the good, the bad, the ugly. And I think that's part of why my faith is so strong and so rock solid, because I know that at the end of the day, churches will fade and people are going to fail you, but God really will never fail you. He's always going to have your back. And in some of the worst moments of my life, I really had to look to Jesus to say, who am I and who do you say that I am? Because so many other girls were trying to tell me who I was, and I stuck out like a sore thumb. And I would say one of the greatest lessons and how that's turned into a triumph is realizing that I was never created to fit in a box. Maybe some people are, but I have been a firecracker that blows open whatever box you put me in my entire life. And I apologize that for that for a really long time, because I never had mentors who allowed me to kind of give me the green light for that. And if there's one thing I would encourage people, if they're younger, older, wherever you are in your journey, is just to really assess that. And if you're feeling uncomfortable in a situation, you might need to kind of do a gut check of, is it the people that I'm around? Is it the company that I'm at? Who am I hanging out with? Who's speaking into my life? And am I getting permission to be who God's created me to be? Or are people threatened by maybe the call on my life? And so they're trying to diminish that. And I just wish that I would have learned that at a younger age.
Absolutely. That there's so many powerful things in there that, I mean, we could literally dive into each one of those. But I guess, so a question that I'm always intrigued by with anyone is, as they talk about faith life, okay, how for you personally do you discern between, all right, this is something Megan wants to do, or is this actually what I'm getting called into, in this season? Because I mean, once again, people are all across the spectrum in their walk, but for you personally, I mean, how do you discern from that?
Oh, so glad you asked. This is one of my favorite things because I think that it's a huge question for Christians, and it's a huge question actually for non-Christians too. I was just in Florida last weekend and was able to have some incredible conversations with people at very different walks in their faith walk. And it's very common for me to say things like, oh, God told me this, or God led me to this. And I've been able to really discern the voice of the Lord and the Holy Spirit specifically, who, Jesus gave us to be another comforter and the person who actually talks to us on earth. And so I think it starts with a foundational belief that God does want to talk to you. I personally am of the belief that the gifts have not passed away. So I hear from the Holy Spirit. I've kind of watched, I've seen healings, I've seen miracles, I've seen financial, all these like crazy things happen my whole life. And so I think it starts with a right revelation of who God is, and that's not, you're not being prideful to understand that God wants to do great things through your life. And if you have a wrong interpretation of who the Father is, then that distinctly put a cap on what I think that he can do through your life, because it's not God holding back, it's oftentimes us holding back. And another thing is in Psalm 37:4, it says that he'll give you the desires of your heart. And so breaking that down, it means both that he'll give you them and also that he'll help carry them out. So if if we're in right alignment with the Lord, we're hearing the word, it sharpens our spirit, sharpens our mind, will, and emotions, then we need to at some time take a leap of faith and understand that God's not going to put desires in our heart that are just blatantly opposite of anything that he would have from us, right? If we're submitted to God and we know that our life is submitted to God, then quit worrying about it. Quit getting so legalistic about it and thinking about, oh my gosh, like God's going to call me to China. Well, do you have a desire for China? Like, are you walking in blatant sin? If you're not, then God probably gave you that desire. I think we just make it so hard and sometimes allow these like legalism and religiosity, if you will, to be freaked out about these things. And I'm like, dude, God wants you to be free. He created your personality. He created every facet of who you are. So he knows that there are going to be certain things that you gravitate towards and that you're better at. And he gives you those desires. And so like, I just think we get too locked up in our heads, and God will gut check you if it's wrong. He will. But a lot of times we don't even take action because we're so scared that, oh, if this is God's will, this is God's will. I'm like, no, get out of your bed and go do stuff, and God will check you along the way. I promise you, he will. He loves you enough to make sure that you're not going to get way off the deep end, and he's with you. He wants to make your way prosperous. He says that. So, yeah.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. So one item that you talk about, multiple different times, but not necessarily at great length, and you've hinted even at a little bit today, is your high school basketball playing. Okay. Now I have no idea if you're all state. I didn't look up the stat sheet or anything, but there's a lot of lessons and life lessons that can be learned, playing an athletic sport, or, I mean, really any extracurricular activity. But what about, playing basketball stuck out to you or has been, good life lesson teacher?
Yeah. So I had a really emotionally abusive coach in high school, and didn't know what that was at the time. And so he was very intimidating, should not have been coaching women whatsoever, had already gotten kicked out of a different school in our Class A system. And that those should have all been red flags. And again, because I didn't know that God created me to be a trailblazer, God created me to be somebody that questioned everything. Out of a good heart to make things better. And because I'm an Enneagram 8, so that's a challenger, it's a protective challenger, and it's somebody who absolutely like protects people who are victimized, but hates when people victimize themselves. Does that make sense? So, but when people are truly like in a power struggle under kind of an oppressor, if you will, my heart is like mama bear. I mean, like I'm going to save my cubs, which I think is also why I'm a coach. God just made me that way. But as a 13, 14-year-old, did I know that? No, I was scared of this 6'9" man who said, hey, everybody, we're running because Megan dropped the ball. Everybody clap for Megan. So we're going to do running drills because Megan did this wrong. I'm like, way to go, bro. Way to create some team unity. Right. Way to make the whole team hate me when they already do, So just division, which now like I could dissect every single attribute of what he did because I read nonverbal communication so well, and I understand that hurt people, but I didn't know that back then. So we were talking before about listening to my podcast, and there's an episode where I talk about the sixth man and, being that first person off the bench and being right on the cusp of being that leader, but feeling that leadership on the inside of me. but not getting along with the girls in my group. And I was one of like two seniors, and that was really hard because again, I knew that God had called me to leadership, but I was being punished because I didn't want to play college basketball because I'm a musician and I was in full-time show choir, the leads in all the musicals, all that kind of stuff. And so again, it was really hard. But I think one thing that I would want to teach people from that is that you can't just look at the circumstances. Again, you have to listen to the voice of God. And why I ravenously work with all of my girls on their identity and their core values and their passions is because if I would have just known that I was called to be an entrepreneur and a songwriter, and kind of separated myself from people pleasing somebody that really doesn't matter beyond high school and has no
Yeah.
power over me beyond high school, I would have shed a lot fewer tears and not cared so dang much, because I knew that the second I left high school, it just really wasn't going to matter.
Right.
And you better believe I'm coming back for my 10-year school reunion this summer. And I'm like, all you people who were mean to me, let's see where we are now. Like not even really vindictively, but I'm just like, the glow up is real. And all y'all who are still living in high school who thought you were hot stuff, like, I'm going to love you and I'm going to show you that that was dumb. But no, it's just interesting. Perspectives, everything.
Absolutely. No, that's great. And those are a lot of takeaways. And, I'm sure some were learning moments. I'm sure, a parent or a sibling tried to help you learn in the moment. And some,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, only, looking back 5, 10 years later, are you able to really see, all right, what was that grooming me for, right? What was that getting me ready
Yep.
to be able to handle, past high school athletics? So
Oh, absolutely. And it totally did. I mean, you build a bigger backbone with every hard thing you go through.
absolutely. So after high school, you decide, you know what, I'm going to get the heck out of Nebraska,
Yep.
and go somewhere, right? And so tell me a little bit about the decision on, the university college that you chose, and why that one.
Yeah. So Belmont's one of the top music schools in the country. I like to challenge myself. So I was like, let's just try to get into the hardest school in the country. Let's do it. And so I remember I had a basketball game or show choir competition every single weekend that I was supposed to go in person to try out. So I had to do a video audition. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to get in on this. Like, whatever. So I did. My mom is an incredible piano player. My dad's a guitar player. They met in a recording studio 35 years ago. We all sang. And so my mom literally sight reads one of my piano pieces. I had never been classically trained. Voice lessons existed of like singing in the car growing up in 5-part harmony with the family. And, it's just what we do as a family. And so I knew I wanted to be a voice major, picked Belmont, ended up getting in, got a nice scholarship. It was great. But I knew I just wanted to get out of here. I mean, Nebraska didn't have anything in terms of a commercial voice program, and I knew I didn't want to be an educator. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's just not what lit my heart on fire.
Yeah.
But again, like now looking back, it's really interesting. I'd probably do things differently and be a different major, just because I realize now that I could take a bunch of voice lessons outside and have a lot more time. Because as a music major, you're in like 5 million 0 credit hour classes. It's basically like being an athlete. But I just wish that I would know what I knew now. I was not confident going into high school. I mean, I developed an eating disorder because I was so overwhelmed, and I was finally the smallest fish in the biggest pond ever. And yet that was like the best thing in the world for me,
Yeah.
because I think we can get a really big ego sometimes when we're used to being the best of the best. And then you leave Omaha, Nebraska, and you're like, people can't even find Omaha on a map. And
Yeah.
so it ended up being the best thing for me. And God worked in huge ways to help me get over my eating disorder. And it's what made me fall in love with self improvement and really realize my calling, all because of some really dire circumstances.
That's great. And so as you're at Belmont, if I understand correctly, some different things happen inside of your own family dynamic, and then you find out about a scholarship that's offered, and so you say, well, I should try and get that scholarship.
Mm-hmm. So, my mom, I'd see what was going on. I was 19 and I'd just gotten kind of through the worst of the eating disorder, and I was dating my first boyfriend, and my mom marched me into the kitchen and basically was just like, "Hey, you're putting all your ducks into their basket. Like, what are your goals? What do you want to do?" And, Facebook listens to our conversations. And so, the Miss Nebraska before me had just been crowned, and I, for some reason, still like don't know why, it was on my Facebook and it popped up on my homepage. And I just felt like the Holy Spirit spoke to me and was like, you're supposed to do that. So I was prepping in Nashville the entire time. I was like, okay, you got to do like a local or something. And there's a talent and I like got to get a dress, like whatever. And so I threw craft together and literally was like, okay, cool. The Omaha pageant's the same weekend as my fall break. Like I don't have money to spend $500 on a plane ticket 8 times. So if I win, I win. And if I don't, I'm done. So I ended up winning Miss Douglas County, and there were only 3 fewer girls at that local than at all of state. It's the most competitive local. I didn't know that at the time. And I was just passion on fire. I mean, like I had no idea what I was doing at all, but I just was like, we're going to wing it. I got passion. I even changed my platform in between locals and state because I had no idea what I was doing. And then went back to Nashville and prepped for 9 months and came back and won Miss Nebraska. And it ended up being the only reason why I was able to finish college. My mom lost her job that year, and I got $10,000 in scholarship. And then I used the confidence that I learned through pageants to negotiate actually free housing, which is another $10,000. I marched into the VP's office. Don't know what I was thinking as a 21-year-old, but I was very confident. And I was just like, you basically pimped out my name this entire year and like used it as, look at, you went to Belmont. So you're going to give me 10 grand. And they're like, okay. So it worked.
I love it. So I don't want to take anything away from your story, but I completely understand that. When I got hired, I was 19, and guys told me, hey, call me back when you're a junior, a senior in college, and we'd love to hire you then. And I said,
Wow.
hey, if you don't hire me now, I'm not coming back. And he goes, all right, you got the job. I think about it now, I'm like, what an idiot. What kind of comment is that? But it worked out for all parties. So yeah,
oh my
so
gosh.
I hear you on that.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing.
No, that's great. So you win the competition. What was probably the 1 or 2 biggest things that you learned in your first competition? I guess, whether it was from winning it or just in the process that, you still carry with you today.
Yeah. Well, I'd never been around so many like high-powered women at first, and that freaked me out. I was not a huge fan of female friendships. Even before I started my company, I was like, Lord, joke's on you, never doing one-on-one. I hate that. Like, put me in front of crowds. I was terrified of speaking in front of people before pageants. So that completely developed that. I was like, give me a mic to sing all day. Like, yep, but speaking is completely different. In the same way that if you were to ask a speaker to sing, they'd be like, I'm not a singer just because I'm a speaker,
Yeah.
And so I'm so grateful because I look at what God's used in the past 7 years now to really activate my calling through that. And I just think about if I would have never entered the pageant, like, where would I be? Would I have the skills that I have now? Would I have the confidence and the leadership and the knowledge? And I don't think that I would. So that's number one. And then number two was learning how to handle failure. So at the national level, I didn't place. I was not prepared at all. And Nebraska doesn't have the prep team like Texas does and like all these different things. But I will tell you, it's been absolutely incredible to watch how God has used even things 6 years ago. I mean, I was just in Florida last week with with the current Miss Florida USA, and she was my Miss Texas at Miss America because she went to school there. Long story short, she told me a story she said, because we weren't friends till recently. And we found out that we had common values, went on this trip together, whatever. But she told me, she's like, you know what? I need to tell you something. And I was like, what? And she's like, 6 years ago, I saw you and a couple other girls at Miss America, and you carried just like a light in you. And she's like, I don't know how to describe it, but there was literally just like a light around you wherever you would go. And she's like, I wasn't a Christian at the time. I was going through a really hard time in my life. And I convinced myself in my own mind that I was going to figure out what the heck that was. And so here we are 6-7 years later, and she's just telling me this. And she's like, well, it ended up making me find a church in my area, give my life to the Lord. And she's like, it hasn't been perfect since then, but she's like, it literally is like what inspired me to discover my faith. And I didn't get to see what that seed did for 6 or 7 years, and I wasn't even trying. But when we're living our lives authentically with who God created us to be, even in our imperfection, things like that can happen. And whether we know the manifestation of that or not, we don't always get to hear the ta-da of the story. Right. But little things like that are still happening. And I just like, how cool is that,
That's the coolest. I mean, that is absolutely amazing because to your point, like, all right, that's the one story you do know about, let alone the others that have been impacted that you just, haven't reconnected with or never got to hear about. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing. So you win Miss Nebraska, and then that starts Powerhouse Pageantry,
yeah.
right? So after that, you're saying graduated, and now I'm going to start coaching folks.
Yeah.
what prompted the idea to get into coaching? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of things that, come
Yeah.
into it, but a
Oh.
version of the story.
It's the dumbest story. I mean, it's really not like profound at all. I was working at a coffee shop and had like $0 to my name. I felt like God told me to move home. I was pissed about it. I was like, Lord, don't feel like it. I want to live in Nashville. And the Lord was like, no. So I was super uncomfortable, and I knew that it was like that leading feeling where it's like, move home. So I moved home, broke up with my boyfriend. I mean, completely started over. I had no friends. I hadn't lived in Nebraska. I was Miss Nebraska, obviously, but you're gone all the time. So like I didn't really make friends or any of that during the year I was home. And so I like completely started over. I was making like $10 an hour, and started my company with $160 in my pocket, and knew I wanted to empower women just based off of like the limited knowledge that I had at the time. And I was like, I know what I've been through, and I kind of know like what I like. And I thought about life coaching, but I thought that that was really guru-ish and too broad. And so a girl actually ended up DMing me and was like, hey, are you an interview coach? Do you do interview coaching? And I remember thinking to myself, and I was like, I was like, could I? Like, I was not interested in fitness. I was not interested in fashion. Terrible
Yeah.
at that. Not interested in any like walking.
Yeah.
No. But I was like, interview. I was like, that's like basically ministry. I was like, I could do that. So I did, and it was so unprofessional. And like, I remember the first calls I used to take were like, I'm like, how did anyone work with me? Why did anyone work with me? But my first girl won, my second girl won. I mean, we had all these accomplishments, and it was just like bing, bang, boom. And I was like, okay, I guess I know what I'm doing. And I just kept learning. So it's just been a snowball effect. Now we're in, I think, like 45 states. I've stopped counting. I don't know. And just had several winners, and it's just been amazing. I mean, I look at all the girls' lives that I've just gotten to be a part of their story. And I think about all the times when I had no one in my life to lead me through some of my most vulnerable moments. And so I think that's what keeps me going too, is just remembering that these are real people's lives. And if I ever disconnect from that because our company gets too big or whatever, then I need to do something different. And so, but I get to build the leaders of tomorrow and the most fantastic women in the country who are changing the world, who come from all different backgrounds. And I just feel extremely honored.
Absolutely. So I got to ask, what was the voice in your head that actually allowed you to say yes to the first, the first
Yeah.
message?
That's a really good question. Gosh, it was so long ago. I should probably know this better for the book that I write one day. But honestly, I think I can remember that at night I just started to be in, like, I was interested in personal development, and I legit did not know what the word entrepreneurship meant till I was like 23 years old. Like, wish I would have been super cool to like start earlier.
Yeah.
But I think I just started like to find, like, I found ClickFunnels and Russell Brunson and some people who were, doing crazy things. And I just started reading everything I could get my hands on and listening to podcasts. Like, I've been listening to podcasts for literally like a decade, and I'm a complete nerd. Like, I literally have a bookshelf here. I have another one over here. I have another one over there in my tiny apartment. Like, I think I just committed myself to growing. And I think when you open yourself up to that, it's almost impossible to not turn into an entrepreneur. And then combined with my personality, I don't like to be controlled, and I don't like to be told what to do. So I was like, yeah, this whole working for somebody else thing is going to end real quick. And, and I've been humbled along the way. Like, 2 years into my company, I had to go back and work as a waitress. And that lasted like 2 months because I got so ticked off. I was like, no. And I just like doing whatever it takes. But those are the most beautiful moments too that you remember. So I think it was just like a slow progression, but I would get off my shift and then I would literally sit in the coffee shop and just research stuff. And then it all just kind of came together when that first girl DM'd me, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm just going to say yes, even if it's scary.
Yeah. So you mentioned that in one of your podcasts. And I was going to ask you about it today because Damon Johns, who is, probably most well known for being on Shark Tank, but I mean, his money came from creating FUBU, which, if you were born after 2000, may not know what FUBU is, but it was a fad. It was a fad for a while. And so all of that, he actually talks about how for his first 5 years, he worked a full-time job making about $30,000 a year to pay his personal bills, so his business could just spend the money on the business and not try and support both. But there's plenty of entrepreneurs that say, no, don't have a plan B, just, focus all your time on the business. So, for entrepreneurs that are out there, I mean, you hear both ends of the spectrum. How do you do the balancing act of all right, I do need to spend the most time on this, otherwise it may not ever grow into what I want it to be. But at the same token,
Yeah.
I need to, have a financial, backing to support my lifestyle.
Yeah. I am actually, maybe this isn't popular opinion, but I am somebody who firmly believes that you shouldn't quit your job until you've darn near replaced your income or at least replaced your bills.
Mhm.
Um, I just think that the entrepreneurial journey is so hectic already that why add more stress to yourself and this like time release pressure when it's unnecessary. And I also think that there's a humbling aspect of it too, where I think hating what you're doing every day helps you to have the motivation to eventually be able to quit. I mean, I've just kind of reconnected with a lot of entrepreneurial friends of mine lately, even in the area, and I'm making more of an effort. Whereas before, I just didn't really care because I have an online business and it's mostly women.
Okay.
And so I've been connecting more and just even asking them about their stories. And I think that's extremely common. Where yeah, I don't actually know anybody who's really just like up and quit. I mean, more power to you if that's worked, but I just think that that's a lot more stress than is necessary. And I think fiscal responsibility is something that we have to learn as entrepreneurs in general. And so I think that you're just kind of starting yourself off on a much harder foot than is completely necessary. And also, last point, as an entrepreneur, like they say in sales, if you need the money, you usually act differently on the sales call than if you don't need the money, right?
Yep.
So, again, if you quit your job, people can sense desperation a mile away, especially in this culture, especially people who watch videos every single day of their lives and are on social now. And I can say that with confidence because I'm a nonverbal communication expert.
Yeah.
So people can sense inauthenticity a mile away. And just why would you do that to yourself? Go hustle from 5 to 9 p.m. And even if you have a slower progression, like it's just going to be better for you.
Absolutely. So every year I have like little mantras that I want to be kind of like the things that are what I'm focused on for the year. And one of them this year is you have to say no to what you want so you can say yes to what you want most. And I think for
Mm.
so many people, their focus is, well, I struggle at saying no to things that I don't want to do because I don't want to let people down. And when you're really
Mm.
getting to levels of success, it's not even saying no to the things you don't want to do. It's like you have to say no to things you would like to do because it's taking up
Yes.
the time, the energy that you want to use on the thing you want most. And yeah, I think that's a tough lesson to learn, but definitely a skill that has to be developed.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm dealing with that right now because we're scaling so much
Yeah.
and learning how to not live in the distraction zone and delegating things is very humbling because when you've built your baby for years and it's your baby and you know how to do everything, it can be very difficult because it involves trusting other people.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely learning that right now. But time is the one thing that we can't get back, and it's going to keep on ticking no matter what. And so, in order to grow higher, we have to learn how to drop weight and pass it off to people who actually like love doing the things that you hate, and love and can be empowered in those things that are not in our genius zone. So I'm right there with you.
Absolutely. That's good. So I do have this question. At what point in the business cycle for you, because Powerhouse Pageantry has been, is it 6 years?
Almost 6, yeah.
Almost 6 years. At what point did you feel like this is a real business? I think we all have like kind of that aha moment, like, all right, this is actually something like that could be a career, not like, a hobby or a job or something like that.
Yeah, great question. I don't know if anyone's ever asked me that. So kudos to you. Good job.
Let's go.
But I would say probably 3 years in. Um yeah, I mean, we stopped. Like I wasn't fearful of like where the next paycheck was coming about 2 years ago. And obviously when Corona hit, like, it was kind of for a second, like, was this going to happen? But luckily we were already a fully online business. And so that was a huge blessing. And our clientele weren't necessarily hit by Corona as much as, I can't even imagine having a brick and mortar business. Like my heart just, I'm so passionate about that. I'm like, ugh.
Right.
So yeah, I'd say about 2 years ago, and then again, like once, I mean, even once we got through Corona, I was like, okay, I can do anything. Like I can do anything, And now recently we took on a couple business partners. I have 3 new business partners who are handling a lot more of the systems and the admin. And we've done everything organically. I haven't even like run ads to anything. Built a pretty significant social following, which I'm proud of, but still have massive goals. I'm like, oh, I need to be here. And so I'm just really excited to have help for the first time and to be able to lean on other people for things and allow them, like I said, to work in their genius zone so that I can do what I do best, which is coach people and sell. So
That's awesome. Very good. So as you got the business up and running, then it was time to compete again. And so that was actually last year was probably the first time I met you. Good friend of mine, Brad, was actually the guy emceeing the event, and so I was a +1 there. But so you're up there, you're competing, and you win. And so tell me a little bit about the preparation for that one. Years later compared to the first time that you ever competed.
Yeah, I mean, it was completely and entirely different. So USA and America are like an apple and an orange. Like they're both fruit, but they're completely different. And so I put my entire reputation on the line when I competed again because so many people were like, "Well, you're just a one and done and that was a fluke that you won." And so I said, ha, 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 "I'm going to show you." And
Yes.
but there's a lot of risk with that too.
Absolutely.
And so I had no ego going into it, but I was competing against myself, and there were such highly qualified girls that I competed against. I mean, so many former state and even national title holders, like all the admiration in the world for them. I don't believe that you ever have to be a mean girl to be a successful girl. And I coach my girls in that every day. I just think that's stupid and operating out of insecurity. So that's dumb. But yeah, I really was just competing against myself, and I wanted to bring the best physical package, mental package, and as well as communicative package. And so, I mean, people ask you this all the time, like, did you know you're going to win? And I firmly believe, like, if you don't at least feel that way, like, I think you're going to perform a lot worse. So, did I know I was going to win? Like, I'm not in the judge's brains, but did I know that I did a dang good job and I won over every single one of them and had a perfect interview? Yeah, I did. But I also do this for a living every day, right? So that was the standard for myself, because if I didn't hit that standard, like, I'd be a complete fraud. So what was so cool is I had all this life experience and all this knowledge that I didn't have 6 years ago. So I felt like I was just giving myself actually like my first chance, because Miss Nebraska in the America system was just like trying stuff out and seeing what sticks, So I got to use all the knowledge, all the resources, all the things that I've taught my girls for 5, 6 years, and put the pressure on myself to basically say, "Okay, y'all, watch me. I'm going to get this done. Like, this is going to happen. It's going to happen. And my tactics work. So it was just really cool because I got to carry all their stories with me. And if you heard in my onstage question, even, like, that's what I talked about, where I'm like, I'm just so honored that Confidently Beautiful means for me that I get to carry all these things with me every single day and when I'm impacting others. And to know that I could just speak that authentically, and I got to be completely myself the entire time. I mean, so many people talk about, like, I'm a church person, so, like, I said, come on, like, right before my onstage question. I didn't even plan that, but I was raised in a certain kind of church that likes to talk back, so knowing that I won without changing an iota of who I was, and now I get to encourage other girls to do the same thing. I think that's the most special thing about winning.
Yeah. So it's interesting. You had made a comment earlier. The gal that you connected with that just saw some sparkle about you, right? Some light about you, and it kind of led her into a faith life. And she had made the comment that it hasn't been perfect since then. And I think sometimes that can be a misunderstood concept, right? Like, hey, if I have a faith life, then life becomes easier, or it becomes simple or perfect, right? And not the case in the grand scheme of it. You and I both know that, but it allows you to maybe have, I guess, like a different focus, but also a different understanding of when things don't go right. This is where I'm at. So for you, was there any portion of you going into it that you had kind of said, all right, if this doesn't happen the way I would want it to, which is winning, here are the things I can still be thankful for having learned in this situation?
Okay, so I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm so black and white that did not cross my mind.
I love it. Yes.
But I get But I get why you're asking that. Like, and
Yeah.
it's a valid point, right? Like,
Yeah.
because things don't always happen the way that we think they're going to happen. And we can't live life with our identity being validated by something that in some respects is completely out of our control. So Miss USA is a great example of that. I know without a shadow of a doubt that I had one of the best interviews. I know that I have a great walk. I know that I presented the best dang package I possibly could, right? And if you would have told me to pick half the top 15 with randomly throwing stuff at the walls, I would have had a completely different top 15. And that's perfectly okay. We have an amazing class of women. Everyone's worked their butt off. But at the end of the day, it's in our contract that Miss USA can pick whoever they want in the top 15. And I fully realize that my platform is exactly the same as Asia, who's amazing, who ended up winning. And so there's no chance that I was going to be in the top 15 from a PR, from a TV perspective, because they're not going to have two top 15 packages with the exact same story, right? Prison reform. So I can know that, right? And separating my identity from my achievements, I always talk about this, is so incredibly important, because then I was able to go into Miss USA with zero expectation, knowing that a national pageant is way different than a state pageant, that if I'm being completely honest, the people who are in the top 15 aren't necessarily who placed the top or by merit were in the top 15. It was the Miss Universe organization's selection. And that's completely okay, right? I'm a business owner. I can respect the heck out of that. It's in my contract. I knew that ahead of time. So some girls can get all butthurt about it and whatever, but I'm like, it is what it is. And I think that's where it's super important to have a vision for your life, separate from that. And I've had so many girls reach out to me like, how are you okay? How did you lose more weight after Miss USA? I've gained 40 pounds. I'm miserable. I'm depressed. I'm this. And some of these girls made top 15, right?
Yep.
And so I have an opportunity to be a minister to them and to say, hey, like, it's because my identity is not in this. And it doesn't mean that I cared any less. But it does mean that God has a plan for my life that's irrevocable. And it's not contingent upon one person's opinion of me or one organization's opinion of me. And that makes me powerful. And no one can take that away from me.
Yeah, that's great. That is great. Well, good. So I want to ask you a few pointed questions. So these are a little less about like your story, how you've gotten to where you are, just more like I'm intrigued by what your answer is going to be. Okay. So
okay, cool.
One idea that I firmly enjoy talking about is Ed Milet. I don't know if you listen to any of his podcasts, but
yes, I do. Yeah,
he's my guy. He's my guy. So yeah. Anyway,
love it.
Yeah. So Ed has this phrase, and for probably 2 years now, it has just been like a very focal point for me, and it's blissful dissatisfaction. And he talks about being a risk a person runs is when they hit their goal, plateauing and not trying to become the best version of themselves, right? Because they hit their goal, so now let's just maintain. He said the other side of that coin is we're always in constant pursuit of becoming better, that we never take time to realize all of the great accolades that we have, right? Which we kind of joked about earlier when I was just reading yours, but that happens too. So for you, how do you balance that? Hey, I'm doing great things, but I still want to do more.
Well, I'm not perfect at it at all. I mean, just this morning I called my friend freaking out and I was like, can you please bring me back down to earth? And it was like 5 minutes and I was like, okay, this is great. I just need to externally process this and I'm a human and it's fine. I also really, really encourage people to learn what their Enneagram type is and to figure out their personality and their hardwiring. So the difference between an Enneagram and like a Myers-Briggs is that your Enneagram is literally like I said, your hardwiring. It's not software. It's not, it doesn't change. It's innately your core motivations of your core longing, core desire, and core fear. And those things will never change. So when I learned that when I feel betrayed or controlled, I turn into the stress and security fight or flight version of Megan, that helped me to be so incredibly self-aware in situations where I was able to bring the manifestation of that emotion that was an overreaction down to a level 2 instead of a level 8, because I was able to say, okay, this made you feel controlled, Megan. So it's actually not as big of a deal as you think it is. And you can calm down and you are successful. You are okay. You are giving value to people. All those lies that would come in your head because you're feeling stress and security can be really mitigated more quickly. So that's something that I would encourage everybody to do. And I think is a godly principle too. God wants you to know your identity, or just go in the Bible and speak over your life who God says that you are. Because chances are the trigger of the situation, which is a whole different conversation on why I use the self-coaching model with my clients. But that situation's out of your control, but you need to learn how to control your thoughts and your emotions and your actions and your results after that. And just knowing that those are in your control, I think helps me to not be too hard on myself, but also not get to a place where I'm too like satisfied with the status quo.
Yep, that's great. Okay, next pointed question. What is the best book you've ever read?
Oh, I hate this question. I love books so much. It literally just depends what I'm reading right now. I embarrassingly have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 books on my desk next to me right now. And I think that I'm going to read all of them. Oh, 10, actually 10. That's embarrassing. So right now I'm reading Goal Getters by Nicole Crank. She's a mentor of mine. She is a pastor in St. Louis and an incredible human being, boss lady. And she actually allowed me to write one of the acknowledgments in the front of the book, which was insane because I was like, I'm not famous enough for that, like at all. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. There'll be like 20 people in the front. There's literally only 7 acknowledgments in the front. And I'm like me next to the guy who like created TBN and Daystar. And I'm like, why? So it's a really great book on goal setting. Obviously very pertinent for the year right now as people are setting new goals, but she just has a beautiful way of making it super simple, and you can map out your whole year in, I think she says like 3 hours or less. So
Oh, wow.
it's pretty good.
All right, I'll have to check that out. Now, I have a question. Have you ever read the book, The Defining Decade?
I have not actually. I've heard of it though.
Okay. So, just in the space that you're in coaching, and it's, mostly younger ladies, right? It just talks about your 20s and how your 20s are, really the runway to your future, right? I mean, a lot of people kind of mess around with their 20s and then, they're a little bit behind. Other folks are, chugging away, right? Like, I mean, you're in your 20s and it's like, wow, the platform that you set, I mean, that's going to exponentially grow now in 30s, 40s, right, in years to come. So that would be a good one to put on the list once you get through the other 10 or 11.
I wrote it down. I know.
Put it on your list for 2022.
Seriously, I'll be 30 by then. It won't even be relevant anymore.
Oh, I love it. I love that. That's good. All right.
Man.
And then the last pointed question I have for you is quality in a person. So there's obviously a million qualities that people have, but what's the number one or most important quality for you in people in your life or in your close circle?
I have 2.
All right, we'll let you cheat. We'll let you cheat.
Okay.
1A, 1B.
So I love it. Thank you. I would say integrity and teachability. So the second, put very shortly, the second that the student thinks that they're the teacher, I think we lose all credibility to be the teacher. I've just tried to say that my whole life, and I get pretty passionate and pretty emotional about that because, I just the most incredible people I've met in my life who make the most money and who impress me the most and who are just beautiful people. I've been able to meet a lot of my heroes, and they've actually been my heroes even after I've met them. And it's beautiful, and it's because they carry such a level of character and integrity that matches their level of influence. And so that's why and they're just students, they don't think that they know everything. They still have accountability in their life. I still get a text back, even if they have 1 million followers on Instagram. And I know far less significant people who think that they don't have time for people like me, whatever that means, and have far less influence than people who have millions upon millions of people that they're literally pastoring every day and live with such integrity that when they say they're going to get back to you, they do. And so, yeah, I'd say integrity and teachability are just really beautiful characteristics that I think you hardly can't not be successful if you carry those 2 things.
Absolutely. Well, in a day and age where, people are much more visible now, right, than ever before. I mean, between social media and all the different platforms that are there, isn't it refreshing when the people you meet are who they portray themselves to be, right? And it's not, oh man, is this possible that you could be one and the same? Like,
I know. And I just hope, it's such a good gut check because I just hope that people feel that way about me. Like I could just cry thinking about it. But like I got to meet one of my clients that I've been working with for like 6 months finally in person yesterday. And she sent me the sweetest text after and was just like, I just want you to know that you haven't just helped my life in pageantry, but you've also just helped me as a person, like in my personal life, and just how much that's meant to me. And it was just so amazing that you took an hour of your day, like for free, just to work with me on this today. And I just, she's like, it's just blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like I'm on the floor, just like, oh, a mess after that, because you just hope that. It's always my intention. But as you grow and as you're responsible for more people, like I think people don't realize how much we as leaders like carry the weight of that, carry the burden of that. And I certainly don't know how people do that without the Lord, to cast that burden on constantly. I mean, my prayer life, like every day, is I'm like, God, I don't know everything. Like, figure it out for me. Like I just need your wisdom. And so, I just hope that I can be that for other people too.
Absolutely. Well, and I think, I don't know how much time you spend on this or, conveying this message to the people you coach, but I'm sure a lot of the skills that you're teaching them, I mean, are just so transferable, right? I mean, I think your ability to interview for a pageant, I mean, well, that's interviewing for the next, significant other, right? That's interviewing for a job. I mean, all
Yes.
those
Yes.
skills are so transferable. It's just a matter of, all right, what situation am I in? So,
Yes, I say that all the time. That
yeah,
interviewing is like dating. Don't
yeah.
just give somebody that you went to Harvard, but tell them what you've been through.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Well, any final things that you'd like to share with folks or anything just top of mind you want to throw out there?
Oh, well, I just want to say thank you for having me on. I love having these kinds of conversations, and I think that they're so important. And I just hope that people learned even one thing or were encouraged by one thing, and just know that, you listening could very well be in this position of being interviewed. And it's up to you to just learn how to provide value for others and continue to be a student and grow in wisdom. And don't ever discount yourself for what you've been through or compare your life to somebody else's life, because there's somebody out there that specifically needs your story and your influence and your set of gifts, even if it's completely opposite of mine, completely opposite of Phil's. Like, it doesn't matter. God's created a unique and specific, very, very narrow road for you to be tremendously successful and happy and just to live a life of your dreams. And so it's little victories every single day. It's one foot in front of another. And yes, you're going to go backwards sometimes, but that's normal. And hopefully we've shown you that it's full of ups and downs, and that's completely okay. That's why you got to keep just encouraging yourself, building yourself up in podcasts like this and in the Word, and just surrounding yourself with the right people, setting boundaries. And you'll look back in 6 months from now or at the end of 2021 and just be like, oh my gosh, like I'm so glad that I'm not where I used to be.
Absolutely. Well, it was an absolute privilege to have Megan today. Yeah, I mean, I don't think if we would have said, "Hey, 19-year-old Megan, here's where you're going to be," years down the road, she would have ever thought this is exactly what it would look like. But
No.
one thing has led to another, and I'm excited just hearing all the things that she has coming up, or she released during the quarantine months, and then what she has planned for 2021. It'll be fun to see not only where she's at in a year, but 10, 20, 30 years down the road. So thanks again, Megan.